Good morning, BuckTube. It is I, your favorite unattainable e-girl, Buck, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Buck's Books. Now, those long-time Buck's Books enthusiasts who I know as the Buccaneers may recall me foaming at the mouth about a book by a man named Peter Newman called The Vagrant. The main thrust of The Vagrant was that it was Fallout, but there were demons in Fallout, and there was a guy who couldn't talk, and he had a sword that could talk, kind of, and he used it to blow up demons. And he was crushed under the weight of the duty to his code, and it was fantastic. I love that book so much. Imagine my delight when I discovered that there were 4 more. Now, I was deceived. There are not 4 more. There were 2 more. And 2 short stories, which were right in between each of the novel-length offerings. So I have pounded through both short stories and the middle book, and I am making my way around to the 3rd book. So this one is ostensibly about the 3rd book, but I will also be talking about each of the short stories, bookending either side of the 2nd book. I might have said 3rd book too many times there. If I did, I'm not going to fix it in editing. Just imagine I said 2nd book at the appropriate point. The books in question that we will be covering today, the one that I'm advertising here, is The Malice, number 2 of the Vagrant series by Peter Newman. And the intermediaries are The Vagrant in the City, which comes between 2 and 3, and The Hammer and the Goat, which comes between 1 and 2. Alright, so let me do this as chronologically as I am able after how I butchered the introduction. The first one is The Hammer and the Goat. Now, in the first book, both of those figures are prominent characters. One is the Hammer that walks, who is just a gross, muscular super mutant woman with rivets that drive armor plates directly into her meat. And the Vagrant and his sidekick Harm, and to a lesser extent the Goat, all help to extract. I think at that point they might have had someone else with them, but they definitely died. In any case, they all help to extract the rivets from the armor and then take the armor off, but the process nearly kills the Hammer that walks, so she had to lay low. The reason they were traveling together in the first place is because she was befriended, because he offered her some of his rare coins that he really just threw out hand over fist. He loved getting rid of those coins. And she wasn't even going to spend them. They just made a sound, and she liked the sound. And it made her not as mad for a while. So she's really got like these Incredible Hulk vibes. But before he started to meditate or whatever and realized how to control it. So she's always just raging and trying to destroy things with her fists, and the only thing that stopped her from destroying them with her fists was that he gave her the singing coins, and that won her over, and then she learned the power of friendship. So this story takes place when the Hammer and the Goat are both laying low in a shed, and they said, hey, we're going to be right back, and she's there, and she's sulking, and she's bleeding because she just tore all these rivets out, and she's like, they're never coming back. I have been betrayed. I'm so mad. I'm going to destroy something with my fists. And the Goat wanders away. The Goat, in all of these books, the Goat is just a problem every time. The Goat never helps anything. I don't know why they're bringing the Goat. The Goat, I mean, I guess it can be argued that it's comic relief, but like the Goat, everything bad that happens is because the Goat is like ornery and mean and disobedient. The Goat wanders off, and the Hammer's like, Goat! She eventually manages to screw up her strength and stand up and wobble outside, and she's chasing the Goat around. And in the course of chasing the Goat around, she reflects on the horror of her life and how she was abused as a little girl before she was turned into a super mutant and stuck full of rivets. But she won the approval of her gross demon father by being the most violent thing that there was. And like the rest of the demons carried weapons, but she never wanted weapons. She was a straight unarmed build, and she was just so good at it, and she was just so beefy and strong. And she meets with this little kid, and the little kid he points her in the direction of the goat, and the little kid is initially afraid of her, but they quickly develop a rapport of a kind. The little kid also has some sort of gross irradiated fallout disease where he is... You ever see that crappy Umbrella Academy show where like the one guy is part monkey and like he's the first or whatever, he's a monkey guy and he was on the moon but like he was just like gross and hairy? So that's what this little kid has. He has like gross hairy disease because he was touched by some form of demon or undead. I'll get into that once we get into the novel proper. But so the kid's following around the hammer, and they go to the Weaver Woman. The Weaver Woman is just this gross spider, random encounter that lives in a tree. And he's like, and she says, the hammer's like, hey, where's the goat? And she's like, goat. She only speaks like single word sentences. Goat. And the Weaver Woman, she talks a big game about how she's going to eat the child, and the child is like, and go down there and eat the hammer. And the child's like, oh no, you can't mess with the Weaver Woman. She's insane and she's a witch and she has power and so the hammer just climbs her tree and just like pulls her out of the tree and beats her to death with her hands. And I love that in fantasy media. One of my favorite fantasy novel sets was the Johannes Cabal, and it's like this grimdark comedy steampunk series. That's a lot. I know that's a lot. I'm not a big steampunk guy. I think it's lame, but Johannes Cabal made it work. And he is ostensibly this necromancer, but he's just a scientist. And his backstory is exactly the same as Mr. Freeze's backstory. That's his whole deal. So just imagine if Mr. Freeze was in the 1700s, 1800s, and there were demons. And that's Johannes Cabal. That's all of it. And his whole deal is he goes and he fights all of these. He doesn't even fight. He's just trying to study, But in his dealings and studies, he crosses paths with all of these evil wizards and stuff like that. And the evil wizards like the one evil wizard was trying to do a magic duel with him, and Johannes Cabal just took out a revolver and shot him in the chest. And I love that. I love when it just can be stripped down and simplified, and it's just like blithe. Like the Indiana Jones with the guy with the swords. Great. Phenomenal. And that's what the hammer did. She just jumped up to they really played up. This could have been like the antagonist of, I don't know, at least a low-level campaign. And she just hopped up there, threw her down to the earth, and hopped down and beat her to death. Phenomenal. Kid was like, that was nuts! Are you kidding me, dude? Well, they continue to pursue the goat. The goat is just like wreaking havoc. The goat is just like cutting a swath through the countryside, and everybody is mumbling about the goat, and she's like, goat, and like, yeah, goat came through here, it knocked down my shed and impregnated my wife. And Hammer's like, goat. Just keeps it pushing. So she tracks the goat, and in the course of tracking the goat, she's having all of these flashbacks, of course, because her body is still sort of failing. Not failing enough to interfere with her ability to beat anything to death with her hands, but failing enough that she is reflecting on how when she was first turned into a super mutant demon monster, one of the boys that had abused her, that had bullied her when she was just a normal human girl and he was a normal human boy in like the normal human orphanage. They both turned into monsters, but she turned into a bigger one, so they'd fought, and she put out his one eye. Knuckle, his name was. She put out his one eye. And she wanted it to make her angst stop, but it didn't, so she stormed away and left him alive. Because nothing, even though she's always compelled to the violence, nothing ever stops the pain inside, you know? So the whole thing is this big meditation on violence and how it begets violence, but also how it's not the answer because it doesn't actually fulfill anything. Like it's a stopgap measure, it's temporary. And that is the character of the Hammer. She's constantly moving from fight to fight, trying to seek some sort of resolution, and it never comes. And then there's a dragon of some kind. I don't know, it's like a lizard. It's got weird fungus growing out of its head, and everyone's afraid of it, and so she's going to go beat it to death with her hands, but she's thinking she probably can't, but it's not going to stop her, you know, because of what she is. And so she's gearing up to beat attempt to beat the dragon to death with her hands. And then she sees that it's got like brainworms. There's like weird roots growing into the top of its skull, and the goat is up there eating the roots, and the dragon likes it, and it's the thorn in the lion's paw, and the dragon goes to sleep. And everybody is relieved, and as they're walking away, more townsfolk are like, "The Hammer, watch out, there's monsters coming this way." And wouldn't you know it, one of the monsters is Knuckle. It's Knuckle. With the one eye, and he's got a score to settle. And it's go time. So they throw down, and the Hammer beats him to death with her fists, of course. And the boy's like, "I want to be like you," and the Hammer's like, no, go home. Hammer shoos the kid off, and then breaks Knuckles' neck, and then goes back to her shed with the goat. And she lays down and sulks, and then the Vagrant and Harm come back, and she's like, "Oh, friends," and that's the end of the story. So the short stories are cute. You know, the novels are trying at something bigger, but like the short stories, the best word I have for them is that they're cute. The novel itself, Malice, it didn't hold up to what Vagrant set is the problem. Vagrant was an incredible book, and Malice was okay. It just went in a totally different direction with it. It's Vespa, the little girl who was a MacGuffin in the previous book, is now a grownish woman. It's unclear as to how grown she is. They just keep calling her the girl. She could be anywhere between around 12 and 30. There's no way to know. But she's been living in the little shack with her two gay dads, Harm and the Vagrant, and they're like confirmed gay now. So this is something. Everyone in Malice is gay. Every character. There are a lot of characters. Vesper is her name, the girl. Vesper winds up running away from home because she's never been away from home, and ostensibly she just wanted to like return the sword to someone who could use the sword because, of course, there's a demon problem. But then she winds up getting whisked away by the Order of the Eye, or whatever, the Silver Surfers, the knights that our boy was in the first place, the Vagrant once was. Well, they have like the Brotherhood of Steel. There's this paramilitary organization that hunts demons, and mostly all that they do is wait around for their gods to wake up, and their gods never wake up because that's classic god moment, you know. That's just how they roll. So they go and they just fret, you know. They stand in their city and they make little tiny raids against the demons sometimes, and they build up these increasingly useless, bloated bureaucracies that interfere with themselves, and they fret about when their gods will wake up and actually do something. So she goes into that, and she's involved in that now, and they're like, "Oh, the sword has chosen you. You're the new chosen one." And she's like, "I'm just a girl or a young woman. I am anywhere between 12 and 30. I can't handle all this responsibility. I've never been off the farm." But then she's like, "Well, what if I could?" Then she becomes the chosen one. She really grows into the role. She's very heroic because she wants to be just like her dad. Every single character that has a significant other in this book is gay. All of them. And I don't know what agenda Newman is pushing exactly, because it could go one of two ways. You know? In one direction it could be that it's the normalization and the representation and yada yada. It's very woke. We're doing good. And in the other one, all of the gay characters, yes, that's all of the characters in the book, but they're all like mutants and demons and zombies and raiders, you know, and sociopath murderers. So like, what are you trying to say? It could be like the Lady and the Tiger. No, it couldn't be. It's not the Lady and the Tiger. It's more like one of those optical illusions, you know, with like the old lady and the young lady, or the rabbit and the duck. I'm gonna see if I can put them over here. I'm gonna put them on either side here. Yeah, I'm gonna put them on either side here. See if I can find them. Where like they're both things at the same time, and it just depends on how you want to look at it. But I don't necessarily know if Newman is quite that literary a writer. I don't know if that's what he was shooting for. He's good. He has this irritating tendency to just end sentences with a couple of adjectives, just slap them at the end. Let me give an example. She recoiled from the putrescence of the creature, its fangs gleaming, shining, opalescent, that kind of thing, you know? And it's stylistic. It's how he does it. There's nothing wrong with it. But like when you notice it, it's hard not to notice, and it breaks the immersion a scooch. That could just be me. So our girl Vesper is wandering through the neighborhood that has become the world, and she is encountering all of these characters, of course, and most of them are trying to betray her because it's a big betrayal world. But it's, even in the Malice, it's a little softer and gentler than it was in the Vagrant. The Vagrant had, ironically, a palpable air of malice throughout the entire book, whereas with the Malice, everything is cuter. There's like this Flanderization that's taken place, where everything in the series is gradually getting less and less gritty and more Neil Gaiman. Like, you can still see what they're after, and it's still got components of spookiness to it or whatever, but it lacks the real filth, I guess, is the best way I can put it, of the first book. Well, I mean, not everyone's that into the filth. That's fine. I loved it, but maybe I'm not the target audience. I'm certainly, as it gets cuter, I don't think I'm the audience he's targeting anymore, but I'm still going to finish out the series, if only to pay proper tribute to how good the first book was. So, our girl, Vesper, wanders around aimlessly, gradually taking on more and more responsibility, and then the sword starts talking to her a little bit, and then she starts lying to the knights to convince them to be useful. And so they start, because she hears the word of God, and then she changes their entire society by saying, "Oh, we must try harder to destroy the demons." And they're like, "That's impossible. No, we have always just waited and gone, whoo." And she said, "But the sword told me." And they're like, "Oh, in that case, we live to serve the seven. Whatever you want, we'll do it. Let's go." And she's like, "Great." And she finds a dirty little boy at some point with demon teeth. His teeth are alluded to repeatedly, but it's unclear as to what exactly was wrong with the teeth. I think they were in some way tainted teeth or demon teeth. And then she takes him home. But no, like, romance was implied, but no romance was shown on camera. The closest that came was like, well, their conversations were easy, and he wound up going back to live with them. But that's just like a stray that she adopted. So it's not clear that there was any romantic interest at all until the next short story, which we'll get there in a second. There are so many factions within this world, and they're all like competing demon factions, and they're not clearly delineated in any way, and they all have names like the Pancreas and the Crumpled Stiltskin, and these are like the head god demon generals, head demon god general, whatever. And all of the lesser demons serve them, but there's also like undead robots who are in some way affected by the tank. There's just so much spiritual juice going around, like the essence, and the essence is just like the gross green fog that just permeates things. It's sort of like the smog monster from Fern Gully, if that isn't too dated a reference for you booktubers. And it just gets into corpses and stuff and provides a shell for the rising of the demons, and it's this whole big situation. So there are there's factions of demons that are competing with the factions of humanity, and then there's factions of undead, and some of the undead factions are good, but some of them are bad, and some of the demons are starting to find their humanity, and now we can make deals with them, and it's a crapshoot, man. It's a crapshoot. And I think that's part of what lost me. What was so appealing about the first Vagrant book is, yeah, there were factions, but everyone was a bad guy. You know, like the good guy was the dude with the holy sword that obliterated demons. Very clean. We know what's going on. There is a paladin in the traditional sense, and this is a paladin book, and yes, it's Fallout, but that's okay. We can have a paladin in Fallout, and he's the only one, and that's why it's a big deal. But now there's like a whole society of paladins, and they're the Brotherhood of Steel, but they're also sketchy and useless and bureaucrats. They're fascists, you know? So they don't do anything except try to self-aggrandize, and they're not very effective in their killing of the demons or the raiders or anything. They don't do anything. So what's the point? What's the point of a paladin? What's the point of a knight that doesn't do anything? You know, that's not... And then all these demons are warring, and they're supposed to be because they're demons, and they lash out to eat each other, whatever. But now some of the demons can be bargained with, and we're making deals, and... 3 stars, man. Like, I wish it was better. It kept my attention, and obviously I retained most of it. And it was more clearly written, for the most part, than was The Vagrant itself. So, like, his writing style is probably improving as he goes on. But it's just, what it's improving to is not my speed. Sorry, Pete. And then, the last of the short stories was The Vagrant in the City. So, remember how everyone was gay in the last book? Well, it turns out Vesper was not gay. And the little boy, maybe he's not little. It's unclear as to how old he was, too, but it's unclear as to how old she was. So he could likewise be anywhere between 12 and 30. The feral little boy with the gross teeth, Jem, I think his name was, who lives with both of her dads now, her uncle Harm, and her dad, he got her pregnant. She's pregnant now, so presumably there was a relationship of some kind there. It's off camera. It was never really alluded to beyond the mention that they were they spoke easily on the road. But she's pregnant now, but she hasn't been around to show anyone that she's pregnant because she has been in the capital city with the Brotherhood of Steel, and she has been attempting to broker peace agreements with the demons. I don't know, dude. I'm fuzzy on what she's doing exactly. But she's been gone and pregnant the whole time, and she comes back and she's like, "Dad, we need you to I need your help out there, and you won't help me." And he's like, well, he doesn't say anything because he's still like a mime, but he's like, he doesn't know she's pregnant. And she's like, "Yeah, I'm pregnant now, and I'm about to give birth to the baby. So I came back here to give birth, but then I got to get right back to work right after that. I wanted to tell you, but then I couldn't. I was just too busy." And he's like, she's like, "It's Jem's. Jem is the father." And Jem's like, "Yeah, we're very excited about all of it." And he just storms out of the house, and then he winds up, in his storming, he runs across the people who dropped her off, and they're like, "Oh, we need a symbol in the city." And the Vagrant's like, "Yeah, let's go. I'm that guy." And he just he's carried off to the city, and he gets there, and they put him in big stupid armor to make him this representation, of the power of the Knights Templar or whatever they are, their whole little sect of the Knights, the Eye. They all serve the sword, they all serve that same thinking sword. It's not even a talking sword, it's just a sword with the the winged eye. I was gonna say it's a sword with an eye and wings on it. Yeah, the winged eye is what they serve. So he goes back to serve the Knights of the Winged Eye, and they dress him up in like the SCV suit from StarCraft, and he's just cruising around in that, and he doesn't walk so good because of his busted leg, and he never got any of his physical ailments tended to, and they saddle him with just an unbearable woman named Sir Harris or something like that, and her bumbling squires, and she's just verbally abusive to everyone she comes in contact with the entire time. And they go out to investigate some situation on a mountain, and it turns out that it was the villain was a spy from the city. So remember how I've been just like running my mouth about how terrible these knights have become? Like, it was great when he was the knight and he was upholding like what the order meant in the first book, but now we see the order and they're just trash. Everything they do is trash. Everything that happens sucks. You can't even pretend to like them anymore. I don't understand why he was serving them. Well, there was a lens, which is like an observer, a non-combatant from the Citadel, who goes out to help Fortitude's Peak, I think it was called, to go help out what's happening on Fortitude's Peak, and he gets there, and he is a betrayer, and he's selling them all out, and he's trying to get access to the weapon cache, and he's just terrible. So they unravel the mystery, and he teaches the squires how to fight and how to have self-respect, and they annihilate the raiders that are trying to get into the town, as well as the betrayer who can go invisible from the Citadel. And then there's the one guy who just gets blamed by Sir Harris for letting this happen in the first place. He's like, but I didn't know. And Sir Harris is like, too bad, so sad, and cuts off his head. And then the squires are looking at the Vagrant like, and the Vagrant's like, that's how it goes, man. We couldn't help him. He was gonna get got no matter what. That's the price of failure. He goes to his daughter, and he's like, I'm sorry I ran away, like a weird guy. But he doesn't say any of this, he like emotes this, he mimes this. And then he says that the name, because they couldn't, the baby is born in his absence, and they can't think of a name for the baby, and he says that the baby's name should be whatever the name of Vesper's mother was in the first book. It was something like Rebar, Reben, I don't know. But he says that, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a perfect name. So that's what, but he says that one out loud, because he says a couple of words occasionally, but only when it really counts, sort of like Doom Guy. And then he goes to the city, and he's like, I need surgery. I need you to fix all of the problems in my body, because I need to be a grandfather. And the doctor is like, perfect, I'll prep the surgery beds. And she says to her secretary, hold all my calls. And that's where the story ends. So again, it keeps your attention. They're cute. I wish I had a better word for it, but they're becoming like quaint. Quaint's kind of a better word. And after how just hard hitting the first one was, it's kind of disappointing, but once again, I'm in it to win it. I'm going to see this out to the end. So those are the book and 2 short stories that I have plowed through most recently. I will not be reading the 7 immediately. I need to take a break. I will finish the series, and you will know about it when I do. In the meantime, the next review is probably going to be the one about the science of beauty that I'm going through right now. That's really good. It's really interesting. All right. Like, comment, subscribe. Anything else you want to see in particular, let me know. You want to talk about it, you disagree with my prognosis here, that's okay too. You're allowed to have opinions even if they're wrong. Let's bring them to the comments and hash it out. Thanks for stopping in. See you next time.